Preston Ashford is 34 years old, my mother said. Her voice was the same temperature it always was. Cold, precise, calibrated for maximum effect. Established. His father's construction portfolio complements our commercial holdings perfectly. I didn't turn around. I'd been standing at the window for 14 minutes, counting each minute on the kitchen clock, the way you count things when your mind needs something small to hold on to, while everything else is falling apart. Outside Chicago in January was doing what it does. The wind off Lake Michigan cutting horizontal through the snow. The city reduced to bones. Gray sky pressing down on gray buildings, pressing down on gray streets. Behind me on the marble island that cost more than most people make in a year was a document. I hadn't looked at it yet. I knew what it contained. My mother turned a page. The sound was crisp, precise, the same sound she made when reviewing contracts, when ending phone calls, when closing doors on conversations she'd decided were finished. You're describing a merger, I said, not a marriage. Now I heard her set down her pen, the click of it against marble. Sophie, she said. And my name in her mouth wasn't my name. It was a designation, a line item that hadn't been performing as expected. Sentiment is expensive, she continued. It always has been. I've spent 32 years building something that will outlast both of us. She paused. You're 27 years old. You have a board seat I gave you. You have a trust fund I structured. All I'm asking is that you continue to be successful. What if I don't want to be successful the way you define it? The silence that followed was architectural. It had weight and corners and a ceiling that pressed down. Want, my mother said, finally is not a category I find useful. I turned around then. Eleanor Mitchell was 61 years old, silver hair cut close. Posture of a person who'd decided long ago that the world would arrange itself around her, and had been mostly correct. She'd built something significant. She'd also never once asked me what I wanted. I won't marry Preston Ashford, I said. She looked at me over her glasses. The look wasn't angry. It was worse. It was patient, the way you're patient with something that doesn't yet understand. The engagement announcement is scheduled for Valentine's Day. It's already drafted. She turned the document around. I saw the letterhead. Mitchell Capital is pleased to announce the upcoming union of Sophie Mitchell and Preston Ashford III, written in third person, like a property transaction. And if I don't adjust, I said, then your trust arrangement will be restructured. Your board seat will be reconsidered. Your apartment, which I've been subsidizing, will become your responsibility. She picked up her pen again. I don't make threats, Sophie. I make projections. I looked at the document, at the window, at my mother who'd given me a name and a trust fund and a carefully arranged life, and had never once given me permission to want something she hadn't already selected. And then I left. I took the elevator down 17 floors, walked through the lobby, pushed through the glass doors into the cold. The snow was falling in sheets, the kind that muffles the city's noise, makes Chicago feel like it belongs to no one. I didn't have a coat, didn't have a destination. I just walked. The wind pushed me south along Michigan Avenue, my heels clicking on salted sidewalk, my breath a small cloud that disappeared before it could amount to anything. I passed boutiques with windows fogged and golden, a woman walking a dog the size of a small horse. A coffee shop where people inside looked like they had somewhere to be that they'd chosen for themselves. And then I passed a man in a canvas jacket. He was crouched beside a parking meter, working with a wrench, in the middle of a blizzard, completely unbothered by the weather. I didn't notice when my heel caught ice. I noticed when I was falling. And then I noticed the hand. Large, sure, unambiguous. It caught my arm before I hit the ground. Careful, he said. I looked up. The man from the parking meter. Taller than I'd registered. Dark hair dusted with snowflakes. Eyes that were quiet, not empty. Quiet, like a room before someone speaks. Thank you, I said. He didn't move immediately. He looked at me for a beat too long. Not rude, just noticing. The way you notice something that doesn't fit its surroundings. You should get inside, he said. The sidewalks are getting bad. I know how sidewalks work. The corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. I know you do, he said, and crouched back down to his tools. I walked 3 steps away, then turned around. Do you work for the city? I asked. I work for myself, he said without looking up. Plumbing mostly. That meter's been leaking into the foundation of the building next door for 6 months. The city ignored it, so you're fixing it on your own." He looked up, held my eyes. "Someone has to," he said. Something about his stillness caught me. The complete lack of performance. The competence of someone who fixes things because they need fixing. I walked away, thought about him once more, that night, then forgot him entirely. The next 3 days were a siege. Eleanor Mitchell didn't wage open war. She waged attrition. Phone calls from her assistant about dress fittings. Emails about venue options. The engagement draft appeared in my inbox 3 separate times with minor revisions. Each one a reminder she was still working on it, still treating my resistance as a phase. Preston Ashford called once. 4 minutes. He talked about merger opportunities, tax advantages, how his father and my mother had already discussed preliminary terms. He didn't ask me a single question. When he hung up, I sat on my bed in the apartment I'd never chosen, the life I'd never designed, and I felt something shift. Not anger exactly, something colder. The clarity that comes when you realize everyone in your life is looking through you. I called my college roommate Natalie that night, told her everything. She listened for 20 minutes without interrupting, and then she said the thing that changed everything. Marry someone else first. I laughed, not a real laugh. "Natalie, I don't know anyone I want to marry. It doesn't have to be real," she said, "just legal. Your mother can't force you to marry Preston if you're already married, and she can't undo a marriage without the kind of public mess she'd rather die than create. Find someone outside your world, someone she doesn't know. Make it a business arrangement. Buy yourself time." I hung up on her, then sat with it for 2 hours. A marriage of convenience. A contract. The only move on the board my mother hadn't anticipated. The problem was everyone in my world knew her. Everyone would talk. Everyone would have an angle. It had to be someone from outside entirely. 3 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop on Wabash Avenue, not drinking my coffee, watching the street outside, running calculations that didn't calculate. Valentine's Day was 3 weeks away. My mother had already booked a venue, and then he walked in. The man from the parking meter. He stomped snow off his boots, ordered black coffee, settled into a chair across the room with a worn paperback. I recognized the spine. Meditations? Marcus Aurelius. Plumbers didn't typically read Marcus Aurelius. I sat there for 5 minutes, watching, thinking, and then I made a decision before I'd fully thought it through. I walked to his table. "You fixed the meter," I said. He looked up, recognized me, didn't seem surprised. "The building's foundation will stop flooding now," he said. That was the important part. "Can I sit down?" He gestured at the chair. I sat, wrapped my hands around my cold coffee cup, and looked at him directly. Because if I was going to say what I was about to say, I needed to say it like I meant it. "I need to ask you something unusual." "All right, I need someone to marry me." He didn't blink. Temporarily, I continued, legally binding, but with a private agreement about terms. "I'd compensate you financially. It would cost you nothing except a few months of proximity." He didn't react like I was crazy. He looked at me the way he'd looked at the parking meter, assessing the problem beneath the surface problem. "Why me?" he said. "Because you're not from my world. You don't want anything from it. You fix things other people ignore. That's more than I know about most people I've met." Something shifted in his expression. "Just a degree or two." He looked out the window. Snow coming down thicker now. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 7. Grace, I don't make decisions that don't account for her." The words landed differently than I expected. He wasn't just a man with a wrench. He was a father, and that changed everything. "I know what a child means in this situation," I said. "She'd be safe. You both would be. You don't know anything about me. I know you fix things other people ignore," I said. "I know you read Marcus Aurelius in coffee shops. That's more than I know about most people." He was quiet for a long moment, hands on the table. Still, the hands of someone who worked with them. "I'll need to think about it," he said. "I need an answer by tomorrow morning." He looked at me then. Really looked. Not through me. At me. "Then come back tomorrow morning," he said. I came back. He said yes. His name was Marcus Chen, 31 years old. His daughter Grace was his whole world. He used the words financially comfortable when he agreed to my terms. And I noticed, without fully processing, that he didn't say financially desperate. We were married 6 days later. Cook County Courthouse, Tuesday afternoon. A clerk who looked like she'd witnessed stranger things. The ring Marcus produced was a plain gold band that fit perfectly. I didn't ask where it came from. As Marcus signed the certificate, something caught my eye through the courthouse window. A black car pulling up. Long, quiet, expensive. A man in a dark suit stepped out, stood beside it, hands clasped, waiting. Marcus glanced at the car. His expression didn't change. The man outside nodded. Barely perceptible. Got back in. The car pulled away. I filed it away. First anomaly. My mother's response came 24 hours later. Silence first. Complete. Architectural. Then everything cut off. Accounts, stipend, corporate card, apartment, all of it. Gone in a single morning. I'd anticipated this. I hadn't anticipated how it would feel. Like stepping off a cliff and realizing you hadn't checked whether there was water at the bottom. Marcus's apartment was on Huron Street, third floor of an ordinary building. Clean, well-maintained, resolutely ordinary. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window facing a fire escape, where Marcus kept a small pot of rosemary that somehow survived Chicago winters. I stood in the living room with 1 suitcase, only taken what I could carry. 3 changes of clothes selected in panic. Laptop, notebook, a photograph I bought at a flea market because I liked the light. The inventory of a woman who'd made a decision faster than she'd made most decisions, and was only now beginning to understand what she'd decided. The bedroom on the left is yours, Marcus said from behind me. I hadn't heard him approach. He moved quietly. This man I'd married for convenience. There's a lock on the door, he said. I turned. It's there if you want it, he said simply. Grace's room is on the right. She knows you're staying. She knows we got married. I told her you're a friend who needed a place. And the married part is complicated grown-up stuff. What did she say? Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. She asked if you like dinosaurs. I blinked. She's going through a paleontology phase, he said. It's very thorough. He moved to the kitchen, put water on. I sat down on the couch, worn but not uncomfortable. The kind of furniture that had been lived in rather than selected. I looked around, drawings on the refrigerator, small backpack by the door with a Triceratops keychain, bookshelf with dinosaur guides on the bottom shelves, and on the upper shelves, Nassim Taleb, Ray Dalio, Marcus Aurelius again, Adam Smith. A history of the Medici banking family. Plumbers didn't read Medici histories. I looked at the books. The rosemary on the fire escape. The man in the kitchen making tea with focused precision. You don't know anything about me, he'd said. He was right. I knew almost nothing. Day 3, 7 in the morning. A knock at my bedroom door. I opened it to find Grace Chen standing in the hallway. 7 years old, dark hair and 2 uneven pigtails. Eyes that were her father's eyes. Quiet, watchful. She looked up at me with great seriousness. I've decided you can be my friend, she said. Do you want to see my Spinosaurus? I said yes. The Spinosaurus was large and extremely detailed. According to Grace, it had the most accurate sail-to-body ratio of any model currently available. I learned more about late Cretaceous aquatic predators in the next 30 minutes than I'd ever expected to know. Grace was bright in the way children are bright when they've spent a lot of time around one very present adult. Curious, direct, utterly unafraid of questions. She asked what I did for work. I said I was between things. She accepted this without judgment. Then she asked why I had sad eyes. I don't, I said. You do. Daddy gets sad eyes sometimes too. But his are different. Yours are like you lost something. His are like he's scared something's going to get taken away. The words landed somewhere deep. I didn't know what to do with that. So I asked about the Spinosaurus. Over the next several days, Grace taught me things. She taught me about theropod intelligence rankings, about the debate between Patagonia and Montana for fossil significance, about the proper way to arrange a Cretaceous diorama. She also taught me without meaning to what it looked like when a child decided to trust you. She'd find me in the mornings, knock on my door with questions, show me her drawings, ask my opinion on things I had no qualification to answer, and I began to understand something. Grace Chen had decided I was worth her time, and that meant more than I expected it to. The quiet accumulation of things that didn't fit. Anomaly 1. The phone calls. Marcus took them in the back room. Always brief. Always low. Once I passed the door and caught 3 words. Hold the position. Portfolio language. Not plumbing. Anomaly 2. The car. A gray car with no visible plates. It idled across the street twice in the first week. There at 10 at night. Gone by morning. Anomaly 3. I came home late one night, found Marcus at the kitchen table with a legal pad covered in numbers. He turned it over when I came in. Quickly. Practiced. Sorry, he said. I didn't hear you come in. You don't have to turn things over, I said. It's your home. It's your home too, he said. For now. For now. The phrase landed oddly. Marcus, I said. What do you actually do? Plumbing, he said. And some investment work. What kind? He met my eyes for a moment. Something in his expression opened slightly, like a window cracking for air, then closed again. The boring kind, he said. Go to bed, Sophie. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. I searched his name in every database I could access. Almost nothing. A plumbing license. 1 LLC. MC Property Services. No details. For a person who existed, he left almost no trace. That was a choice. My mother summoned me to lunch, the club, where Chicago's established money had the same conversations for 40 years. Eleanor was already seated when I arrived, impeccable as always. She waited until the waiter withdrew before she spoke. Tell me about him, she said. You've already had him investigated, I said. You know as much as I do. Surprisingly little, she said, for a man who seems to have made an impression. He's a plumber. She looked at me with the expression she reserved for people wasting her time. He's something else. I've been in business in this city for 32 years. I know every family with assets worth knowing, every mid-level operator, every contractor trustworthy or fraudulent. Marcus Chen is invisible to everyone I know. She set down her water glass. That's not the profile of a plumber. Maybe your contacts have gaps. I don't have gaps. We looked at each other across the white tablecloth. I'm going to find out who he is, she said, and when I do, I'll dismantle whatever arrangement you've constructed. She paused. You can come home. The board seat is still available. Preston is still interested. Preston is interested in the Mitchell name, I said. Not in me. What's the difference? The question sat between us. She genuinely didn't understand. The difference, I said, is everything. Eleanor smiled thinly. Come back to reality, Sophie. He'll disappoint you. Everyone does. I left before dessert, walked into the wind, and realized something. My mother had spent 32 years being so certain about everything that she never wondered what she'd lost in the process of being right. She'd built something significant. She'd also built a daughter who needed to marry a stranger to feel free. Late February. I was walking Grace home from school, 3 blocks from the apartment. She was deep in a lecture about theropod intelligence rankings. And then a car pulled up alongside us. The gray one. No plates. 2 men got out. They moved with studied casualness. The kind that's trying hard to look unintentional. One of them said my birth name. Mitchell, not Chen. I put my hand on Grace's shoulder. She went quiet. The instinct of a child who's learned to recognize a certain kind of attention. We have a message from the man started. And then everything changed. A black SUV turned the corner. Controlled. Precise. Stopped at the curb. The driver stepped out. Then Marcus stepped out. And he wasn't the man who made tea in the kitchen. Wasn't the man who argued about dinosaur water levels. He was absolutely still. The kind of still you don't learn. Get in the car, he said. Not loud. Not aggressive. The voice of someone who's decided the conversation is over. Grace ran to him. Pressed her face against his coat. His arm went around her. His eyes stayed on the 2 men, who were now backing toward their vehicle. Body language of people who'd made a significant miscalculation. This isn't the place, one of them said. There is no place, Marcus said. Tell your employer that. The men left. Marcus got us into the SUV. At the apartment, he took Grace to her room. I heard him talking to her, low, steady, the tone of a father who'd learned to make his daughter feel safe in situations that weren't safe. He came back to the kitchen. I was standing at the counter, waiting. It's time, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he sat down at the kitchen table. And for the first time since I'd known him, he looked tired. "My name is Marcus David Chen," he said. "I run MC Capital. I own approximately 41% of the commercial real estate in the Loop." The kitchen was very quiet. "The plumbing," I said. I needed to know what my properties actually required. After 4 years in boardrooms, I forgot what things were made of. He paused. "And after Claire died, I needed something with a beginning and an end. Something I could fix with my hands. Claire, my wife. 3 years ago. Cancer. She was 31. The words were short, complete. He looked at his hands. "We met at a hardware store," he said. "I was 22, buying pipe fittings. She walked in and told me I was doing it wrong." He almost smiled. She was right. She was right about most things, and I had 4 years with her that were better than everything before them combined. He looked up. After she died, I collapsed. Couldn't be in rooms where nothing was real. Boardrooms, galas, conversations that were just positioning. I needed to touch things, fix things. He paused. And Grace needed a father who came home smelling like work, not like a negotiation. I sat with this. The entire premise of our arrangement had shifted. "Did you know who I was?" I said. "When I sat down at your table." Pause. "Yes, you knew I was Eleanor Mitchell's daughter. Yes, and you still agreed. Because your plan was real," he said. "You needed something real for a real reason, without performance. You sat down and said what it was." He looked at me. "I've spent years in rooms full of people who can't do that." 4 days later, my mother made her move. She arrived at the apartment with Richard Trent and a proposition. She'd found out who Marcus was. She offered terms, recognized the marriage, restore my board seat, capital for a joint venture. In exchange, Marcus abandons his South Loop acquisition, and I return to Mitchell Capital on her terms. Marcus listened, then said no. "The South Loop acquisition protects 32 families from displacement," he said. "I'm not trading their homes for a partnership. This is business, Mr. Chen. Sentiment is expensive. I've heard Sophie say that," he said. "The difference is, I can afford it." And then I spoke. "For the first time. You built something significant," I told her. "You also built a daughter who had to marry a stranger to feel free." The room went silent. Have you ever connected those two facts? For one moment, Eleanor actually looked at me, not as an asset, as her daughter. Then she stood. "Lunch next week," she said. "We'll discuss terms." After she left, something in me contracted. I'd watched Marcus dismantle her in 40 words. Had said things to her I'd never said before. And underneath the relief, I felt something more complicated. The awareness that I'd been moving toward this man in a way I hadn't planned for. The contract had an implied exit. It never accounted for the possibility that the arrangement might become real. I was afraid. Not of Marcus. Not of the situation. Afraid of wanting something I'd arrived at through accident. Afraid what I felt was just gratitude. The way you love a lifeboat. Not a person. I'd been raised where affection was a quarterly review. I didn't trust my own feelings, so I made distance. Worked longer hours, came home after Grace was asleep. Found ways to be present without being present. Marcus noticed. Didn't press. Made space, but Grace called me out. She found me in the kitchen on a Saturday morning. "Are you leaving?" she asked. "No, you act like you're leaving. You're here, but you're not here." She tilted her head. "Daddy does that sometimes. When he's scared." "I'm not scared. Daddy says that too." She slid off her chair, went to the living room, came back with the Spinosaurus, put it on the table between us. "You can hold him if you want," she said. "He helps." I looked at this 7-year-old girl who'd lost her mother, learned to read the weather of adult faces, and was now with complete openness trying to help a stranger she'd decided to love. I picked up the Spinosaurus. It was absurd. It helped. That evening, Marcus found me on the fire escape. We sat in the cold, city below, snow absorbing sound. "You don't have to decide anything," he said. "The arrangement is what you need it to be." "I don't know what I need," I said. "I know. That's fine." I looked at the skyline. "I'm not good at this," I said. Not knowing. I've spent my whole life with outcomes specified in advance. I was going to marry the right person, run the right company. My life was going to be structurally sound, even if it was structurally empty. I paused. "I don't know how to want something I didn't plan for." He was quiet for a moment. "Claire," he said. I didn't plan for her either. I was 22, one bedroom in Wicker Park. She walked into a hardware store and told me I was doing it wrong. He looked out at the city. She was right. 4 years that were better than everything before them combined. He turned to me. You can plan for structure. You can't plan for the thing that makes structure worth having. I asked him what he was scared of. He looked at me, for once completely open. No recalibration, no quiet management. The same thing he said, having something worth keeping. That night, I found Marcus in the hallway after Grace was asleep. I told him I'd learned about the 18 months he spent opposing my mother, the 32 families he protected, how he knew who I was and never used it. Why would I, he said, because you could have. I came in a weak position. You had information that would have changed everything, and you said nothing. It wasn't relevant to what you needed. You came to me because you needed help, he said. What you knew about me, what I knew about you, none of that changes what help looks like. I looked at him across the dim hallway. The arrangement, I said. The contract, I don't want to honor it. Something in his face shifted. I don't want the exit clause. I don't want the end date. I stopped. I want to stay, not because it's convenient, because I want to. He was quiet. Then, Grace is going to want your opinion on Patagonia versus Montana for late Cretaceous research. Are you going to answer me? He looked at me, the window cracking open again, and this time not closing. Stay, he said. Please. Morning in the kitchen. Marcus was making coffee. Grace was at the table with her research materials. Montana is more significant for one type of dinosaur, she announced. Patagonia for another. They're not the same question. Are you staying? She asked me. I looked at Marcus. He was watching me with the small, genuine smile I was already organizing my life around. Yes, I said. Good, because I need an objective second opinion. Daddy's biased toward Montana. I'm not biased, Marcus said. You are, Grace, and I said at the same time. Snow falling outside, light warm inside. Rosemary on the fire escape survived another winter. Nothing dramatic about the moment. No announcement. Just a kitchen and a child and a man pouring coffee. The ordinary, extraordinary fact of having chosen where to stand. I stood there, and I stayed.